Mindsetters, it is our last show. I'm so sad. And with me I have our winner of Sunday, Shucks, and the lovely Miss Mumsy to teach us about history, because you guys are writing tomorrow. Mumsy, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you, Megan?
Good. What are we doing today?
Today we are going to be focusing on paper 2,
exam questions.
How the grade 12s can be excited about tomorrow's exam.
Be excited about it, so you're going to make it exciting for them.
Very exciting.
That's awesome. So let me tell you about what Shucks is doing here. He won on Sunday, and he won himself a Samsung Galaxy Note 8. Shucks, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good about this, and I'd like to say thank you to all the Mindsetters, and focus on your studies and make sure you study hard, and good luck with your reports on the 4th of December.
So you finished now?
Yeah, I'm finished.
Finished.
Yep.
What grade are you in?
I'm in grade 11.
So he is a grade 11 student. And what show did you watch like a lot?
The economics show.
Economics,
so
like
and accounting.
Yep. So Mr. Accounting taught him how to pass. So I suggest you Mindsetters get on top of that, because right now is history. So up for grabs next is the last one. Just look at it. Samsung Galaxy Tab, guys. Tab 3, actually. So how to enter? Simple and easy. All you do is download the race number on our history notes, and that is A2512 if I'm not mistaken. So just go download that, enter the number or the race number into the website, which I will be posting very shortly. Enter as many times as you want to, because this little puppy could be yours. So get entering, guys. We're going to do the draw before the end of the show. But that's enough from me talking. Are you ready?
Okay. I would like to say shout out to my mom, my dad, and my friends, because I told them to watch this show. And yeah, of course, Looney.
Looney's here, guys, but he's only at the back. So we want to say congratulations to Shucks. A big yeah! Congratulations to Mr. Shucks, and we're so happy to have him part of our Mindset family. So we have to say goodbye to you, but thank you for coming in, Shucks, and we are so happy that you guys are part of Mindset. So
okay, goodbye. Thank you very much.
Shucks is a bit nervous, guys. It's so cute. I just want to hug him. But enough of that. Goodbye, Shucks. And are you guys ready for some history? Because Looney's going to leave us, Shucks is going to leave us, and all you're going to be left with is me and Mumsy. So let's get rolling, Mumsy.
Okay, thank you, Megan, and congratulations to Shucks. I'd like one of those as well, but unfortunately I can't get one. Okay, as I said before, today we'll be focusing on paper 2. I'm going to be using this year's exam from February and March 2013. So the themes will exactly be the same as in this question paper that we'll be working with, but obviously the questions will not be the same. So the reason for this show is to give you the skills, to show you how you unpack the sources, how you analyze the sources, and how you interpret the questions. So I've already told you that we're going to work through various questions from the February-March 2013 paper 2 to prepare you for tomorrow's exam. And then what we're going to do is I've selected some questions where I think most learners need the skills. So we're not going to go over the entire exam. If you really want to see the exam, it is available on the Department of Education website. So you can go there and have a look at it. The marking guidelines are there as well. But the reason I'm here, as I said before, is to just help you with the skills. So the first thing we're going to do is to look at the source. We're going to be looking at South Africa and how it was impacted by the collapse of the Soviet Union. Okay, yes, I'm trying to get the source.
The board fights with Mumsy now. She's like,
it does this all the time.
There we go.
Okay, there.
Somewhere. There we go.
Okay, now if you look at the description of the source, it says, this source outlines the factors that forced the National Party government to the negotiating table with the African National Congress. Okay, I'm going to underline the factors that forced the National Party government. I'm circling that because that is our focus. This is about the factors that forced the National Party government to the negotiating table. So we're focusing on the negotiations. Now, as I am unpacking this source, I'd like you to do the same thing when you get into the exam. So even before you read the source, the caption tells you what the source is about, so that when you go and read it, you already know what the source is about. So you will find those things. You will be looking for those factors that helped or forced the National Party government to negotiate with the African National Congress. So let's read the source together. 2 factors were helpful. So already the source is telling you that there were 2 factors. So please don't try and look for 3 or 5 or more, because this source tells you that there were 2 factors that were helpful to de Klerk in pushing for inclusive negotiations. First, okay, so that is number 1, because later on we'll be looking at the questions. And then when you are answering the questions, you will obviously have to go back to the source and look at all these things we've underlined or highlighted or numbered and so on. So the first one was South Africa had succeeded in extricating or removing itself from the Namibian embarrassing situation. I'm not going to read the difficult words because the explanations are there for you to understand. So really don't stress about the difficult words. With considerable assistance from the United Nations. So that is the first point, that South Africa had removed itself from Namibia. Okay, let's read on. The protracted negotiating process culminated in general elections in 1989 and independence in March 1990. So as you can see, they're still talking about Namibia. That is what happened in Namibia. Now, because of South Africa removing herself from Namibia, what happened was that there were negotiations, and then they had the general elections in 1989, and then they officially gained independence in March 1990. Although difficult, Namibia's transition had eventually proved smoother than anyone had dared to hope. So from your knowledge of history, you will know the story behind this, the fact that South Africa was reluctant to give up Namibia. So the whole process of negotiations and independence was not an easy one. So you can also pick that up from the source. Okay, let's scroll down. So I've already read the part. Although difficult, Namibia's transition had eventually proved smoother than anyone had dared to hope. It was perhaps a dress rehearsal for what could possibly be achieved in South Africa. That is a very, very important point. It's very, very interesting. So in other words, what that tells us is that South Africa got to learn from what was happening in Namibia. Now remember, this is happening in 1990 in Namibia, and the elections in South Africa are only going to take place in 1994. But negotiations are also going to start in 1990. So already you can see the parallels there, that South Africa got to learn from what was going on in Namibia. It was perhaps a dress rehearsal for what could possibly be achieved in South Africa, as well as being a sign that under Gorbachev, foreign adventures by the Soviets would be stopped. Okay, now again, historians, you already know that the USSR was involved in Africa, aiding the liberation movements and all that. But then what happened in 1989 was that the Soviet Union collapsed. So what happened was that when Gorbachev took over, he introduced reforms, and obviously that paved way for negotiations in South Africa, because the National Party government could no longer use communism as an excuse not to negotiate with the liberation movement. And that a negotiated settlement should be sought in Namibia, South Africa, and elsewhere by political rather than violent means. Okay, I'm going to underline rather than violent means because you already know that in the 1990s, leading up to democracy in 1994, there was a lot of violence. But what this was teaching, what was happening in Namibia, it taught the people in South Africa, the National Party, the ANC, and other people who were involved in negotiations, that it was possible to achieve change through peaceful means, political rather than violent means, that there was no need to carry on fighting each other. They had to go and negotiate. So that was the first factor that we looked at. Remember, when we started with the source, we said there were two main factors that we were going to look at. So that was the first one. Now let's look at the second one. So if we read on from this source, let me close the pen. See, okay. The second factor was the steady unraveling or the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now remember, I've already told you about this, that the collapse of the Soviet Union was very important in South Africa's road to democracy, because what it meant was that the National Party government could no longer use communism as an excuse, because communism was no longer a threat, as the USSR had collapsed. So I'm going to quickly underline that so that you know exactly what to look for. So it's the collapse of the Soviet Union and the rollback of its domination over much of Eastern Europe. So rollback of its domination over much of Eastern Europe. That means the Soviet Union no longer had control over Eastern Europe. So in other words, it had lost its power, which was symbolized by the destruction of the Berlin Wall on the 9th of November 1989. So again, I'm going to underline the destruction of the Berlin Wall. The date, well, you don't need to memorize the date, it's already there. But the destruction of the Berlin Wall was very important because the Berlin Wall was the only physical symbol of the Cold War. So the fact that the Berlin Wall was no longer there, it meant that communism was not there anymore. It also meant that it was possible for negotiations or change to take place in different parts of the world. So that affected South Africa as well, because if you know your Cold War, you will know that the Iron Curtain was no longer there, because the Berlin Wall had collapsed, which meant that people could move freely between the East and the West. So that affected South Africa as well, because it meant communism was no longer a threat. The collapse of communism destroyed whatever credibility the total onslaught doctrine retained. Okay, now this is where your knowledge of the previous government's policies comes into play. You will know that under P.W. Botha, who was Prime Minister and later on President, before F.W. de Klerk, who took over in 1989, President Botha, came up with a policy called Total Strategy, where he wanted to reform apartheid in limited ways, while at the same time intensifying repression, making sure that the people who were threatening the government were not able to do so. So that was his way of holding on to power. And what was happening during that time was that the Western powers supported him. And the reason they supported him was because of the fear of communism. So throughout the 1980s, that was the National Party policy, that communism should be feared, especially because it had spread to Africa. Remember, Angola and Mozambique had gained independence in 1975, so the threat was no longer just far away in Europe, but it had moved closer to South Africa, the neighboring countries, Angola and Mozambique, which meant that South Africa was also threatened. But then, when communism collapsed in 1989, when the USSR collapsed, it meant that communism was no longer a threat. So that total onslaught that the government was claiming was threatening South Africa could no longer be used as an excuse. As well as reducing fears, okay, so the fears were reduced, so that already tells you that throughout the 1980s, people feared communism. But the fact that the Berlin Wall had fallen, the USSR had collapsed, it meant that communism was no longer a threat anymore, so the fears were reduced. So even though there was still the SACP in South Africa, the South African Communist Party, they knew that the South African Communist Party no longer had the backing of the Soviet Union because it had collapsed. So that is what is meant by that point, that it reduced the fears that the South African Communist Party would remain as a kind of ideological Trojan horse. That means the device used to bring about an enemy's downfall. So in other words, the SACP was no longer an enemy of the government, and that is what the government had to focus on. And within the African National Congress, that means they were working together with the African National Congress, because you remember that they were in an alliance. Okay, I hope that helps you understand the source and how we unpack it. Because before you even look at the questions, it's very, very important to unpack the source. Because if you have not done what I've done here, there is no way you will be able to answer the questions or even understand what the questions are trying to tell you. So before we look at the questions based on this source, I'd just like to hand over to Megan, and maybe you can tell us more about the competition, and then we'll carry on.
I think Mr. James said we must take a break. Okay. So we're going to take a break so Mumsy can find her questions, and then we'll be right back with history, guys. Don't go anywhere. Don't change your screens. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back, grade 12s. Even if you're not a mind-sitter that is doing history tomorrow, you know what? It's so good because this is our last live show. And I know I say that with great sadness because this is the best part of my week. I love being on the show. It is so fun and so fantastic. And today we have a fun, fantastic teacher, Mumsy. So I'm happy to be here. Grade 12, this is just some basic stuff for you. You should just be revising, I promise. Tomorrow you'll be fine because you have Mumsy to take you away with it. So you ready for our questions?
Yes, thanks, Megan.
Let's go.
Okay, welcome back. Now, before the break, we unpacked the source and we looked at the different things that you're going to use when you answer the questions. Now, let's look at the questions. Question 1 reads, name 2 factors that influenced de Klerk to introduce reforms in South Africa. That is a very straightforward question. If you were listening to me when I was unpacking the source, I did look at those factors, and I said there was the first one and the second one. Okay, now, grade 12, it's very, very important to read instructions. The instruction says 2 factors. Please make sure that you don't write more than what you're required to write. A lot of students complain that there isn't enough time in history because the sources are very long and they're expected to write very long answers, so they can't answer the questions or finish the exam. You can finish the exam if you follow the instructions. Name 2 factors, not 4, not 5. Okay, now let's look at the possible answer there. South Africa withdrew from Namibia and the fall of the Berlin Wall. So that is straight comprehension. It's in the source. Let's look at the next question. Question 1.2, explain the concept of communism in your own words. Okay, now if you go back to the source does talk about the Soviet Union and how communism fell there and how communism was no longer a threat in South Africa. So this is where you use your own knowledge. You need to understand what communism was about. So let's look at the possible answer there as well. Let me close this to get the answer. Political doctrine that aims to achieve a classless society in which the means of production is controlled by the state. And if you look at the possible answer, because these are the marking guidelines, it says there any other relevant response. So in other words, you're not expected to give the exact answer as in the marking guidelines, as long as you show your understanding of the concept of communism. And remember, grade 12s, I did tell you that the definition of communism is not in the source. That is where they're testing your understanding of the context. Because if you've done the collapse of the Soviet Union and its impact on Africa and South Africa, then you should know what communism was about, because you start by looking at the Cold War and everything else that happened. Now, moving on to the next question. Why would you regard de Klerk's willingness to negotiate with the Soviet Union over the independence of Namibia as a turning point? Okay, I'm going to underline that so that you can see the important part. Turning point, sorry, that's a wrong color. Turning point in the history of South Africa. So, this question is looking at how well you interpret the source, but it's also a cause and effect question. So in other words, what they're trying to check here is, do you understand the events as they happen in history? How one thing led to another, because that is what history is about. History is not just a narrative. Okay, it's important to know the story, but you also need to know what the story led to, what the event led to. So, why would you regard de Klerk's willingness to negotiate with the Soviet Union over the independence of Namibia as a turning point in the history of South Africa? So we're going to read the possible answer together. Okay, I need to close the pen. It's not closing. Okay. Yeah, there's the answer. Namibia's independence ended white minority rule. So remember, I did tell you when we were looking at the source that whatever was happening in Namibia had an effect on South Africa, because the South Africans could learn. They could draw lessons from what was happening in Namibia. So the independence of Namibia ended white minority rule, and it taught South Africans that it was also possible in South Africa. Let's look at the next possible answer. It created expectations that minority rule can also end in South Africa. So this is what I said to you earlier on, that the South African people knew what was going on in Namibia, and then they were able to draw lessons from that. And that is why then they were able to negotiate with the government and move forward to a democratic South Africa. The next possible answer is, the Soviet Union indicated that it would no longer support the violent overthrow of minority governments, including South Africa. That's a very, very important point. The Soviet Union indicated. Now remember, I did tell you earlier on that the liberation movement was backed by the Soviet Union. So now all of a sudden, if this backing is no longer there, that means that the liberation movement needs to stop violence and negotiate with the government. So if you look at these possible answers, you will see that pressure was on both sides. The government could feel the pressure in the sense that they could no longer use communism as an excuse, but the liberation movement could also feel the pressure because they were no longer backed by the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union said, we are no longer interested in your affairs, you need to start negotiating, we are not going to support or back a violent overthrow of minority government. And then the next point is that the Soviet Union indicated that it would stop meddling in the affairs of Southern Africa. Okay, I want to quickly underline that. It would stop meddling into the affairs of Southern Africa. So that tells you that South Africa no longer has the support of the Soviet Union. And that is also in the source. This created an opportunity for the National Party and the ANC to start negotiations. It's what I was saying earlier on, that the pressure was felt from both sides. It wasn't just the National Party that could feel the pressure, but the ANC felt the pressure as well because it was no longer backed by the National Party. Okay, and then if we move on to the next question, question 4, use the information in the source. Now remember what I said to you about following instructions. So the instruction already tells you that the information is in the source. However, you're expected to use your own knowledge as well as your own knowledge. Now, this is what is going to happen. if you only use information from the source, you are not going to get full marks. If you want to do well and get full marks, you have to show information from the source and then information from your own knowledge. That means studying, because you can't walk into that exam if you have not opened a book. So it's very important to have knowledge of the event. And then what you have to do is to explain. Okay, I'm going to circle that because that is the instruction word. Let's do this. Explain how the fall of the Berlin Wall, okay, that is your focus, influenced the following political organizations. Now, this is a very interesting question because I've already answered it for you, but I'm just showing you how you can answer it when you're on your own. Okay, let's look at the possible answers there. Okay, first of all, it's the National Party. So you already know that the National Party was the government at the time. So how did the fall of the Berlin Wall influence the National Party? The possible answer is the National Party could not rely anymore on Western backing for its anti-communist stance. Remember, I did tell you that throughout the 1980s, the National Party was supported by the West because of the fear of communism. Now, that fear was removed when communism ended and the Berlin Wall fell. So the National Party no longer had that excuse. So this led to tension within the National Party itself, between those people who wanted to carry on with apartheid and those people who realized that there was no place for apartheid anymore. Okay? It's gone back to the question. Let me scroll down. I don't know why it keeps going back.
The board is still fighting
It's
with
still
Momsy.
fighting with me. Okay.
Well, let me
No,
tell
we'll
you
get
about
it right.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I just needed to give us more answers on the National Party.
All right.
Okay. Then the next possible answer is it gave the leaders of the National Party the opportunity to begin talking to previously banned political organizations. In other words, it paved the way for negotiations. So that is the first party that you have to look at. And then if you look at B, the next one is the ANC. Now, I've already answered that question as well, because I told you that pressure was felt not only by the National Party, but by the ANC as well. I'm sure you already know the answer to this question. Let's look at the possible answer there. Sorry, I need to close this to get the answer. The Soviet Union could no longer support the ANC financially. That means the ANC no longer had the backing of the Soviet Union. So it was forced to stop the violence and negotiate with the National Party. The ANC had to change its outlook in terms of the economic policies. Now, this is a very important point, and this is from your own knowledge. Okay? The economic policies. Now, historians, you will know that before the negotiations started, the ANC followed an economic policy that was based on the Freedom Charter, which called for the nationalization of the mines and industries. And they were backed by the Soviet Union. But then what happened was that when the Soviet Union collapsed, the ANC had to change its policies as well. And another reason why, I don't mean to confuse you here, but another reason why it had to change its policies was so that it could get support from the West, because you know that the West won the Cold War. So it was a clever thing to do. So the ANC's economic policies had to change. The ANC had to prepare to start negotiations with the apartheid government. So it takes us back to that point again about the ANC not carrying on with the violence to put pressure on the government to negotiate, because they no longer had that superpower behind them, you know, supporting them financially and giving them arms and everything. So in other words, they were on their own. They realized that the only way to move forward in South Africa would be to negotiate with the National Party. And then, as before, with this question, it does say any other relevant answer, because there are lots and lots of other possibilities as well from your own knowledge. Because remember, the instruction initially said you use both information from the source and your own knowledge to show how these two parties, the National Party and the ANC, were influenced by the fall of the Berlin Wall. So in terms of any other relevant responses, it's what I said to you about the economic policies. You might want to elaborate on that and say that, you know, the ANC government realized, or not the government, because it wasn't the government yet, the ANC realized that if they became the government of the country, then they would have to borrow money from these Western organizations like the IMF and the World Bank. Therefore, they had to change the economic policies that they were going to nationalize the mines, the industries, and everything else, because communism was no longer relevant, so they had to change that. Okay, I think now we're going to have another break,
Already?
a very short one.
Yes, it
Isn't
goes quickly.
I
I'm
know
just
it does.
posting. Guys, it's our last show. I just have a little bit of a tear. It's so sad. But at least it's with Mumsy, and we have a fantastic subject, history, my personal favorite. So don't go anywhere. Just wait a bit, wait for the ads to go, and we'll be right back straight afterwards. Welcome back, Mindsetters. So you guys are G'd, you're excited, you're ready to tackle history, because it's now time for History Revision. It's the last leg, last live show, last day, and I'm so proud to say that you guys have really run the race. That was quite a tongue twister. Run the race well. So Mumsy's ready to take you to question 2, because we have a lot to get through. So thumbs up, chin ups, get those pens out and get writing.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Welcome back, grade 12s. So we've looked at how you analyze short questions. There'll be more of that later on. But what I'd like us to look at now is the extended writing. So what you'll find in your exam is that there'll be 2 questions. You have to choose one. Again, remember what I said to you about following instructions. Read the questions carefully and follow instructions. So if we look at the February exam, the one I'm working with now, it does give you instructions. It says the extended writing, your response should be about 2 pages long. That is just, you know, a guide. It doesn't mean that if you write 3 pages, you're going to be penalized. It's not like, I know there are other subjects where they're very strict when it comes to the word count and the page numbers and all that. No, but they're just giving you a guide that it has to be about 2 pages long. Now, let's look at the first question, and this is going to guide your choice. They're both based on exactly the same theme. Discuss how the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989, sorry, it says USSR, but it's still the Soviet Union, in 1989 influenced Angola to reimagine itself. So again, I'm going to underline that. This is your focus. Influenced Angola to reimagine itself. And then if you look at the next question, remember it's a choice. You don't have to do both. You choose one. So this one is based on a statement. It says the following statement was made in the Angolan Group for Reflection on Peace document about the civil war in Angola. Oil, diamonds, and their revenues are the major source of greed by the rulers. Okay, it's still on the same theme, which is Angola, but in this case, you are looking at the specific things, which are the resources the country has or had. So that will be your focus. Do you agree with this statement? Substantiate your answer by using the information in all the sources and your own knowledge. So now, in terms of the choice, so both these questions are on Angola and how Angola was influenced by the collapse of the Soviet Union. So again, it's about cause and effect, as I said earlier on. But if you look at these questions, the difference is question A is based entirely on your own knowledge. So you might maybe use some of the information from the sources because it will be similar to your own knowledge, but this is based entirely on your own knowledge. Okay, I will show you the possible answers now, but I'm not going to read the entire memo. I just want you to see the difference so that when you make a choice, it is an informed choice. You need to know that if you do choose a question that is asking you to use your own knowledge, that is what you have to do. So in other words, you won't be using the sources to try and answer the first question because that is about own knowledge. Whereas the second question is now based on the sources. Now, in terms of marking essays, or the extended writing, I know some people still use the old term essays, but it's the extended writing. What happens is that the markers are going to credit your own opinions because you will be answering a specific question. Okay, so by own opinions, it doesn't mean that you can just make it up. It's not about how you feel, but it's informed opinions. So in other words, you need to use evidence to support your opinions. Please don't make things up. You can't rewrite your history now. Remember, history is about things that happened in the past. So they'll be looking at your opinions, so you'll be debating issues. That is where your own opinion comes in. And that debate is based on the factual evidence. So that has to be supported by evidence, as I said to you. So it does say here, own opinions supported by evidence. So remember I said in the first question, you are not using the sources, you are using your own knowledge. So the evidence that you're going to use also comes from your own knowledge. In other words, it's the facts that you know about the event. And then they'll be looking at how well you construct your argument. What I always say to the learners is, if you are an historian, you need to imagine yourself as a lawyer in court. You're trying to prove a point. You want your client to win the case. So it's very, very important to construct an argument. Now remember, an essay is divided into 3 parts. You have, so I'll just write over here, you have your introduction, where you state your position, you state your point. So when I read the introduction, I need to know where you're going with your argument. What are you going to prove? And then you have the body of the essay, which will be divided into paragraphs. Remember, it's very important to divide your work into paragraphs, and it's one idea, one paragraph. Please make sure you don't write different things. Ooh, sorry, I need to erase that because I meant to say one idea, one paragraph. So it's one idea, one paragraph. You don't want to write paragraph. You don't want to write something that is just a jumble and people cannot follow what you're saying. And then in terms of question 2, where you're using the sources to answer the question, they will be looking at how you select the evidence. So if you look at this next point, it says the appropriate selection of factual evidence to support your argument. Appropriate selection. So in other words, please don't open a tab. I call it opening a tab. In other words, you write everything you know about the event. You need to focus on the question. So when you're learning and you're looking at, let's say, Angola or South Africa or whatever the case is, you must know that there are maybe 10, if not more, possible extended writing questions that the examiner can ask you. So the trick is to focus on what is being asked. Don't write everything you know about Angola in this case. You focus on the question. Now remember, I did say to you, even though these the 2 questions we looked at are on the same topic, the focus is actually not the same. If you look at the first one was about how Angola reimagined itself, and then the next one was about the resources and how they are used by the leaders. Now let's look at the first one. Discuss how the collapse of the Soviet Union, USSR, in 1989 influenced Angola to re-imagine itself? Now, this is the question that is based on your own knowledge. So in terms of the possible answers, remember I did say to you that I'm not going to read all of them. So you should discuss how Angola reimagined itself after the collapse of communism, and then you support the line of argument with the relevant evidence. So if you look at the main points, we're not going to look at all of them. I'm still struggling with this board. I don't know. Okay, there it is. So in the introduction, you need to indicate how the collapse of communism in 1989 influenced Angola to reimagine itself. So that is your introduction. In other words, you've taken a stand. I know exactly what you'll be saying in the rest of your essay. And then, in terms of elaboration, this is now the body of your essay. Let me quickly write there that this is the body. Remember, the body of the essay is divided into paragraphs. You're not just going to write one long thing. You're not going to write different ideas in the same paragraph. Okay, so these are just some of the main points. Remember, this is this year's February exam. Chances are you're not going to get the same question, so there is no point in me going over each and everything. But you can see that this is the factual evidence that you are looking at here. Angola was used as a pawn in the Cold War. Angola was already divided between the three nationalist parties. So in other words, you're giving the context. You're setting the scene there, and then you're giving more evidence, like Cuba supported UNITA, and so on. So we're going to scroll down and see other possible answers there. I'm not going to read you everything as I said to you. I just want to get to the conclusion, because that is the most important thing. Okay, so all these points before are factual evidence to support your argument. Now, in the conclusion, you need to tie up. You are not rewriting the essay, but you are tying up the argument. It has to be relevant. Please don't include new information in the conclusion. If there is anything that was not discussed in the body of your essay, that cannot be in the conclusion. No new ideas. Okay, I need to add this here. No new ideas. Because if you start introducing new ideas, then you are not tying up. Tying up means it's something that you have discussed before. You are now just summing up and answering your question, just reaffirming what you said in the introduction. I hope that helps. Remember, this is about the skill of writing an essay, because you are going to get a different question, obviously. There is no way they are going to repeat this question in the exam. But it's just about knowing what to include in the introduction, how to structure your body of your essay, and then how to conclude as well. Now, let's look at the next question, which is question 2. Now, remember that that question uses sources. It says the following statement was made, and then I did underline it earlier on, that you have to use information in all the sources and your own knowledge. So again, you are not going to get a good mark if you only use sources or you only use own knowledge. There has to be a balance between the two. So you will have worked through the sources already to extract information, relevant information. Remember the skill, select appropriate information. So you will take out relevant information that is going to help you answer this question, and then you will obviously have to integrate that with your own knowledge. Okay, so again, it won't help if you have not studied. So don't think that you can just walk into the exam and rely on the sources. It's very important to have your own knowledge as well. Okay, let's look at the possible answers here. Again, I'm not going to read everything. Introduction, you need to indicate whether you agree or disagree. Going to quickly underline that, because that was the instruction. Do you agree with the statement or not? So that has to be indicated. So candidates need to indicate whether they agree or disagree with the statement. And what was the statement? Okay, let's use a different color there. The statement was this. So obviously you will get a different statement if you do get a statement. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the introduction should tell me whether you agree or not. Don't leave it to the marker to decide whether you agree or disagree. Sometimes people don't make that clear in the introduction, and then in the body you can see, oh, you know, the evidence this person has given shows that they agree with the statement. But that means you have not written a good introduction. It has to be very clear in the introduction whether you agree or not. And then in terms of elaboration, it's exactly the same thing. You'll be using information from the source, the different sources, as you can see. So you'll be focusing on the different aspects of the source. Here, they were looking at oil, and then they're saying, okay, this is how oil influenced the leaders. And you look at the next one. They're looking at the diamonds there. Again, this is just an example. As I said to you before, you might get a different question. And all this information you will find in your sources and your own knowledge. Again, the conclusion, you need to tie up your main points. And remember what I said earlier on, you are not introducing any new information. Okay, and then the conclusion also has to be relevant. So in other words, if you had agreed in the introduction, you can't disagree in the conclusion. Okay, we're going to have a short break now, and then we'll carry on in a few minutes.
Is it question 3 after this?
Yes, it's going to be a TRC question after this.
Awesome, because...
okay, we'll start with question 3 and then move on to the TRC.
Bridget asked me, is Mumsy going to cover anything in TRC? So
yes,
perfect timing. Awesome, guys. Take a break, grab a glass of water, just hop up and down to get those juices flowing, because you know what? After the break, you are back with Mumsy and Megs. See you later. Welcome back, guys. So last show, almost one more ad break before we have to say goodbye. But then, you know what? You guys have learned well, studied hard, and that's all we can do. And then it's over. So it's very sad. But now we're going to do question 3, because you guys need to learn more about history, because history is awesome. It's legit. But quickly before the break, because the draw is happening like after this ad break. So let me tell you quickly how to do it. All you have to do is enter the race number. It's A2512 into the post that is at the top of the Facebook page. It's facebook.com/learnextra with an X. And you enter it into that, and enter as many times as you can, because we're going to do the winner afterwards. So please get entering, and you could win yourself a Samsung Galaxy Tab 3. Yep, Mumsy, let's go.
Thank you very much, Megan. Okay, now we're moving on to the negotiation process in South Africa. And I like this question because it's got 2 viewpoints. So what normally happens in the history exam, they give you viewpoints. And those viewpoints can be similar or they can be different. So in terms of the questions that you might be asked, we're going to look at the specific question for this one. But what you need to know, as soon as you see viewpoints, you need to know these commands: compare and or contrast. So when you're comparing, you are obviously looking for similarities. And then when you're contrasting, you are looking for things that are different. So you're looking for the differences. So whenever you see a source like this with viewpoints, you must know that you will either be asked to compare them or to contrast. Even if they don't use those exact words, that is what you will be expected to do. Okay, so if you look at viewpoint 1, viewpoint 1 is an extract by Tertius Delport, a high-ranking member of the National Party. So even before you read his viewpoint, you know that he was in the National Party, and he was not just an ordinary member, but he was a high-ranking member. Because later on you might get a question asking you about the usefulness of the source, or whether the source is biased or not. So all these points are going to help you answer such questions. He expressed fears. Okay, that is another clue already before you read the source, that you know that this entire viewpoint is about his fears after F.W. de Klerk delivered his speech on the 2nd of February 1990. Now this source, this viewpoint is not about that speech, but history students, you already know what F.W. de Klerk said on the 2nd of February 1990. Unbanning of political parties, release of political prisoners, including Nelson Mandela. So you already know that. Cause and effect. Cause and effect, remember, did say that to you before the break. That is very important in history. So now, let's look at his fears. He is a high-ranking member of the National Party, the party that was still in government in 1990, leading up to the country's first democratic elections. First of all, he says the ANC are going to take our land. That is obvious bias. He is biased against the ANC. See, that's another thing I've just been reminded now that students struggle with. You say the source is biased and it has bias. Please make sure you use those words correctly. So there is obvious bias there. The ANC are going to take our land. They're going to take everything we've worked hard for. Okay. Worked hard for, going to take everything we've worked for. Sorry, didn't say hard. Everything we've worked for. Okay. That is very, very emotive. So you can see that this viewpoint is very emotional. We're going to have no law and order. So he's saying that there's going to be chaos in the country. That is his viewpoint. It won't be safe to walk the streets. So he's saying there will be crime in South Africa. The SACP, that is the South African Communist Party, and Umkhonto we Sizwe want an absolute domination in a one-party state. So what is he saying here? He claims that there will be no democracy in South Africa. And we will have a totally socialist approach. This is another interesting point, that he is saying that even though the ANC had changed its policies, he doesn't believe that they are going to be socialist. Socialist, that means they're going to, sorry, I have to close the pen. I'm just drawing over the board. They're going to nationalize their mines and industries. So in other words, people reading this, especially if they're big businesses, are going to obviously be influenced by this, and they're going to be in fear. Then they are not going to support this move to democracy, because they'll be thinking, oh, our businesses will be taken away from us, and the country will move from being socialist to being communist, so that is a serious problem. So he says there's going to be a totally socialist approach to the economy. The NP desperately has to fight for minority protection. You already know what he's referring to when he's saying minority, okay? So he's saying that it is the duty of the National Party to protect those people. So he's saying that the ANC is still the enemy here, because they're going to change things. They're going to introduce socialist principles into the country's economy, take their land. There's going to be chaos in the country, crime, and everything that is negative. So the National Party had to protect that, so that one group or party cannot grab all the power. Now remember, he did say earlier on that that is what the SACP and Umkhonto we Sizwe want. They want a one-party state. So in other words, he's saying that the National Party has to protect the democracy that they had in the country. I mean, we all know it wasn't a democracy, but they viewed it as a democracy because it obviously favored the National Party. We have to ensure a multi-party situation in South Africa. Multi-party situation in South Africa. So he's saying that make sure that not just one party dominates everything, but allow other parties to have a say as well, especially the minorities. Okay, let's look at the second viewpoint. Remember what I said to you earlier on, that you will be expected to find the similarities or the differences between these viewpoints. Again, we won't have time to go into detail when we look at the questions, but what I'd like you to take note of here is that this viewpoint is different from the first one because these are comments made by Frina Ginwala. Okay, now you might not know who she was, but a member of the ANC. Okay, now she's expressing her views on how a new South Africa might unfold. So she's looking at a democratic South Africa. She was a member of the ANC. Now the source tells you, remember I said to you, when you start reading the source, you might not know who she was. Now the source tells you she was a member of the ANC. So remember we read viewpoint 1 from a member of the National Party, and now this is now from a member of the ANC. So obviously you will be contrasting here. You'll be looking at the points that are different here. And he was an aide to Tambo. So because time is not on our side, I'm not going to read the entire source. This caption tells you already what the source will be about. She wants a new South Africa. So in other words, she is talking about democracy in the country. She's talking about majority rule, because that is what the ANC was fighting for. So you'll be looking at the actual source to find all those things. Now, I'd like us to quickly look at the questions that you might get to compare or contrast these two sources. Okay, the first one is straightforward comprehension. What was Tertius Delport's attitude towards the ANC and the SACP that is found in viewpoint 1? Again, they've directed you here that you need to go straight to viewpoint 1. So in other words, don't waste time and look at viewpoint 2. So you can see there, he obviously did not support it. There was fear there. He said all those negative things about the ANC and the SACP. If we move on to the next question, explain to what extent you would consider Delport's viewpoint as being biased. Now remember, I did write that word on top of the source. Remember, that is how you unpack the source, that it was biased. So let's look at the possible answer here. He spoke on behalf of the minority of white South Africans. That was his viewpoint. Not all white South Africans felt the way he felt. He did not understand the inner workings of the ANC. Now remember, we did mention the fact that the ANC had changed its economic policy. But in his viewpoint, he claimed that they had not changed it. They were going to implement socialist principles in the economy. And obviously that would instill a lot of fear in the big businesses in the country, and therefore was not in a position to speak on their behalf. So he was not a qualified person to talk about the ANC because he was not the member of the ANC. He didn't know about how the ANC operated and what their policies were. And then the next possible question there is comment on whether you think Delport's view was a reflection, okay, I need to quickly underline that, a reflection of how the majority of white South Africans felt at the time. Comment on whether you think that was a reflection of how the majority of white South Africans felt at the time. Now that's an interesting question because you can argue both ways. Because of what he was portraying the fears of a lot of people, of white people in South Africa at the time, but on the other hand, he was a member of the National Party. He was obviously talking from that point of view. Now let's look at the possible answer. So here you can agree as long as you support your statement. So as you can see, it does say here in the memo, the marking guidelines, you can agree or disagree as long as you support your answer. Okay, so again, it's not just I feel like agreeing or I feel like disagreeing. Where is the evidence? So if you agree, then you need to say things like, most white South Africans were indoctrinated by the National Party. So in other words, they believed what the National Party was telling them. So remember, I did say to you that when he was talking about the economic policy that was going to be socialist, obviously big businesses would be scared and they'll be worried about their businesses. So obviously they would then support him. So they would have the same view. He was a high-profile leader of the National Party and was speaking on behalf of his constituency, that is the voters. And the voting patterns of the majority of white South Africans revealed that they believed the propaganda of the National Party. That is your own knowledge. You know that the National Party was voted year after year, no, every 5 years, not year after year, sorry, in the South African elections. And that already tells you that the majority of white South Africans, because black people did not have the right to vote then, the majority of white South Africans then supported the National Party because they were indoctrinated. Or you can give any other relevant answer. Or you can disagree. So there is room to agree or disagree. Now, if you want to disagree, you can argue that no, he was not representing all South Africans. He was only representing, not represented, the views of all South Africans. He was obviously biased because he was a member of the National Party. And also, from your own knowledge, you know that in 1992, there was a referendum that was organized by President de Klerk, where he wanted to get, the views of the white South Africans in terms of the negotiation process and democracy in South Africa, and the majority of them supported the reforms. So in other words, they wanted things to change in South Africa. So it's not true that Delport's views reflect the views of the majority of white South Africans. Okay, and then another possible answer here could be that de Klerk had the support from his constituency to pursue negotiations that links in with the referendum and previously banned organizations. So there were other people who believed in what de Klerk wanted to do. Okay, so we've looked at the different viewpoints, and what we'll be doing after the break, because we'll be breaking now just for a few minutes, I'd like us to look at the TRC and how you analyze a cartoon. But we're not going to do that in a lot of detail because there will be another show later on, a pre-recorded show where you can get more information about the TRC.
Awesome. And you know what? This show is at 9 p.m. again tonight. So if you didn't understand something with Mumsy or you don't know what's going on, it'll be on at 9. And I just posted a cartoon about the TRC, so just for fun though, not that cartoon. But I hope you guys enjoy it. After this is the draw. Get ready and get excited, Mindsetters. Coming up next is the last and final draw. See you now. Welcome back, Mindsetters. That is the last ad break of this whole year. It's so weird to think about, though, I have to say. But I'm so sad to be leaving you and so sad to be saying goodbye to Team Mindset. But no more sadness because we have like 15 minutes plus maybe, 15 minutes to carry on with history. And Mumsy's going to go over the TRC and all about that you guys wanted to know. She's doing a cartoon analysis. Hey? Yeah. Okay. So let's get rocking and rolling.
Okay, thank you, Megan. So now we're going to look at another skill, a different skill, and we are going to focus on the TRC. The skill is cartoon analysis. How do you analyze a cartoon, again, so that you don't waste time when it comes to answering questions in the exam? Now, let's look at the caption first. It's very, very important to look at the captions in history. It says, this cartoon by Zapiro shows, already tells you, the cartoon shows Desmond Tutu presenting the final TRC report to President Mbeki in 1998. So you already know the two figures in the cartoon even before you look at it. On the extreme right-hand side, okay, let's look at that extreme right-hand side. See the cartoon. Okay. De Klerk is seen with officers from the apartheid State Security Agency shredding evidence. So now, they've already told you what the cartoon is about. If I can just quickly circle those people so that you can see who they are. There is the president, Thabo Mbeki. How do you know that? If you don't know, if you don't remember what he looks like, he is the one with the his hands held out like that, receiving the report. This is obviously Archbishop Desmond Tutu, because he is holding, if you read this, it does say TRC final report. Remember, I did say to you, in the cartoon, everything is there for a reason. Everything is there for a reason. It's not there by mistake. And then the instruction of the caption does tell you that de Klerk is in the right-hand, extreme right-hand corner of the cartoon. So that is de Klerk. Now, how do you know that this is former President de Klerk? Let's say you don't remember what it looks like. It does tell you that the other people in the cartoon are the State Security Agency. You know they are in uniform. So you'll see the people in uniform, then you will know that they are the State Security, or they're from the State Security Agency, and then this must be de Klerk, and this must be Desmond Tutu, because he is holding the final report of the TRC and handing it over to President Mbeki. And then another very interesting thing that is happening here is that Tutu says, we dealt with as much of the evidence as we could. So in other words, he's saying to the president, this is the work that the TRC has done. We did everything. We looked at as much evidence as we could. But remember, the caption does tell you that the apartheid state security people are shredding the evidence. So what are they saying? They're saying, so did we. So in other words, they're saying that even though Tutu says they dealt with as much evidence as he could, he actually didn't, because some of the evidence was shredded. It was destroyed by the state security police, or the agency. So this report was not a complete report. That is what this cartoon tells you. I think it's a very, very nice cartoon. It's very clever, because already you know, even if you don't remember everything about the TRC, you know that the TRC had flaws. It was not a complete document or a complete report that was presented to the president.
Oh, guess what? This is so exciting. I'm actually redeeming myself because we have a caller and her name is Mandy. So, Mandy, hello Mandy.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So, do you have a question for Mumsy?
Yes, I do.
Oh, please enlighten us. Tell us about it.
All right. So for question 4.4.2.
Okay, let's get the question. Question 4.4.2. Can you read out the question quickly?
All right. The question says...
you want me to read it for you? Sorry,
yeah,
what did you say your name was again?
Mary.
Mary, yes?
The question says, what do the words, we dealt with as much of the evidence as we could, and so did we, tell you about the TRC? Support your answer with valid reasons.
Yes. And what is your question, Mary?
Okay, my question is, how could the question ask about the TRC when the quotation is from the former government? Like, what's the significance of the government's quote when the question is about the TRC?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I will answer it now. Okay.
Awesome. Good speaking to you. My first caller. So good to hear from you. Thanks, Mary.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Okay, now let's look at this question. It says, hello, sorry? Yes. The question says, what do the words, we dealt with as much of the evidence as we could? Remember, that is what Bishop Tutu said. So these are the words of Tutu, if you go back to the cartoon. And then you've got another quotation which says, so did we, which was from, I'll just write apartheid agents here. The state security or agency. Tell you about the TRC. Now, Mary's question was, this question is not easy to understand, because how can the state have anything to do with the TRC? Yes, she's gone, but that is what she asked. She asked, how or why do we have a quote from the government when the question is about the TRC? Now, in order to answer that question, I'd like to go back to the cartoon in order for you to understand exactly what was going on. I think it's in the next page. Now, if you look at the cartoon, you will see that the cartoon shows not only the ANC, but it shows the government agencies as well. So, I've already told you that this is President Thabo Mbeki. This is, it's gone back to question 3. Let's quickly look at that. Okay, here's the cartoon again. So you can see that that is Thabo Mbeki, President Thabo Mbeki. This is Archbishop Desmond Tutu presenting the report. And the reason why there are quotations from both sides, it's because what the apartheid police did affected the work of the TRC. So that is the connection between the two. And that is why there are quotations from both sides. Because what Zapira wanted to show was that even though the TRC thought that they had dealt with as much evidence as possible, that was not the case. Because what had happened was that the apartheid police had destroyed most of that evidence. So the connection there is that whatever was presented by the apartheid government to the TRC was not complete evidence. I hope that answers your question, Mary, because I know that it does seem a bit weird that you would have a quotation from the government, former government employees, when the question is about the TRC, which was a new agency that was formed in the new South Africa. But remember what I said earlier on, cause and effect. So that is what Zapira wanted to show here, that the TRC was unable to do everything they were expected to do, because behind the scenes what was going on was that the government police had destroyed the evidence. Therefore, the evidence that was given to the president in that final report was not complete. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to quickly look at the questions, possible questions that you might get here. You need to comment on Zapira's depiction of F.W. de Klerk. So the key word here is depiction, how de Klerk is depicted, how he is shown in the cartoon. Okay, remember de Klerk is that figure in the extreme right-hand side. Now let's look at the possible answer. De Klerk created the impression that he is hiding the evidence. Okay, remember that the security people said they had dealt with the evidence, so they had shredded it, and also de Klerk is hiding. He's only showing his face. So in other words, he is not revealing the whole truth. Now you will remember that the TRC was about unearthing the truth about South Africa's dark past. De Klerk seemed that he is not content that the TRC report might contain specific omissions. So in other words, it's saying that he might be found out, that they were not, as the government, they did not present everything they were supposed to present to the TRC. So if you look at that cartoon again, you can see that he is not portrayed in a positive light. He is portrayed as a person who is hiding the truth. Okay. And then another one shows de Klerk's security agents shredding information or important evidence. So again, it's what I've been saying to you, that they did not give all the evidence to the government. So when Archbishop Desmond Tutu went to President Mbeki to say, here's the final report, we dealt with as much evidence as we could, they said, so did we. So in other words, we were able to hide some of the evidence. That final report does not have everything it's supposed to have. Okay, let's look at another possible question here. So this is Mary's question. What do the words, we dealt with as much evidence of the evidence as we could, and so did we, tell you about the TRC? Now remember, when Mary asked that question, I already answered it, and I said that it's because of what the government did to prevent the TRC from doing a proper job. Now let's look at the possible responses there. The TRC only dealt with those cases that were reported. that is exactly what I said before. Some of the cases were not reported because what happened to them? They were shredded. They were destroyed. So again, Mary, that is why it was important to include that quotation from the former apartheid government police as well. Many victims and perpetrators did not appear before the TRC. Now, you already know that from your own knowledge of the TRC, that there were problems there. Okay, the NP government officials destroyed important information that could have been used. So, in other words, it was not a complete document, the final report that was given to the government. And then let's quickly look at the last question on the TRC.
My lovely lady, we have no time because I have to announce 3 winners quickly. So, third prize of the Curio winners. Sorry, I've got your names written down. So, Musa Intaladi, you have won 250 Rand cash money. Second prize, Shaluva Moimani, you have won 500 Rand cash for being a Curio winner. And in first place, Dania Rashidi, you have an average of 93.3% for Curio. That is awesome. That's sick. So you have won yourself a Samsung S3 Mini. So awesome to you. But now we also have the draw. So I have to go all the way to Mumsy, and she is going to tell us who the amazing winner of today is. So you can hear there's so many names in here.
Yeah, just pick one.
Yeah, just one.
Okay.
So you ready for this? We're not even looking, so you can't see nothing.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, you gonna read it or am I gonna read it? I think you should.
Okay, the winner is Umpile Sigarametso.
Oh, she said it way better than I would have.
I don't
I was
think
like,
so.
how would I have said that? Okay, awesome. So you have won yourself a Galaxy Note Tab 3. Let me fetch it so you can see what it looks like. I need to run over here. And the Galaxy Tab 3 is yours. So congratulations to you. We only have 50 seconds left. So do you want to say?
Yes. Good luck for tomorrow. I know you can do it. And don't despair if we did not go over all the questions, because remember what I said to you, you are not going to get the exact questions. And later on, there will be another show on the TRC.
Awesome.
So please keep watching.
Thanks, Mums. It's been so cool to work with an amazing person. So good luck, history learners. I wish you all the best. Think, concentrate. You've got this. You have everything that you need to know. Umpile, congratulations. This is yours to own. That's it. That's the last live show, guys. I'm so sad. Have a great Christmas. Happy New Year to all of you here from the Mindset team. We love you. Thank you very much. And happy holidays.
And
Cheers,
we'll
guys.
see you next year.
Yes, definitely. Welcome, Mindsetters. It is our last show. I'm so sad. And with me, I have our winner of Sunday, Shucks, and the lovely Miss Mumsy to teach us about history, because you guys are writing tomorrow. Mumsy, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you, Megan?
Good. What are we doing today?
Today we are going to be focusing on paper 2,
exam
looking
questions.
at, yes, how the grade 12s can be excited about tomorrow's
Be excited
exam.
about it. So you're going to
Yes.
make it exciting for them.
Very exciting.
That's awesome. So let me tell you about what Shucks is doing here. He won on Sunday, and he won himself a Samsung Galaxy Note 8. Shucks, how you feeling?
I'm feeling really good about this, and I'd like to say thank you to all the Mindsetters, and focus on your studies and make sure you study hard, and good luck with your reports on the 4th of December.
So you finished now?
Yeah, I'm finished.
Finished.
Yep.
What grade are you in?
I'm in grade 11.
So he is a grade 11 student. What show did you watch like a lot?
The economics show. the
Economics,
economics
so
and
like
accounting. Yep.
So Mr. Accounting taught him how to pass. So I suggest you Mindsetters get on top of that, because right now is history. So up for grabs next is the last one. Just look at it. Samsung Galaxy Tab, guys. Tab 3, actually. So how to enter? Simple and easy. All you do is download the race number on our history notes, and that is A2512 if I'm not mistaken. So just go download that, enter the number or the race number into the website, which I will be posting very shortly. Enter as many times as you want to, because this little puppy could be yours. So get entering, guys. We're going to do the draw before the end of the show. But that's enough from me talking. Are you ready?
Okay, yeah, okay. I would like to say shout out to my mom, my dad,
Aww.
and my friends, because I told them to watch this show.
So
And
sweet.
yeah, of course, Looney.
Looney's here, guys, but he's only at the back. So we want to say congratulations to Sharks. A big yeah! Congratulations to Mr. Sharks, and we're so happy to have him part of our Mindset family. So we have to say goodbye to you, but thank you for coming in, Sharks, and we are so happy that you guys are part of.
Officially gained independence in March 1990. Although difficult, Namibia's transition had eventually proved smoother than anyone had dared to hope. So from your knowledge of history, you will know the story behind this, the fact that South Africa was reluctant to give up Namibia. So the whole process of negotiations and independence was not an easy one. So you can also pick that up from the source. Okay, let's scroll down. So I've already read the part. Although difficult, Namibia's transition had eventually proved smoother than anyone had dared to hope. It was perhaps a dress rehearsal for what could possibly be achieved in South Africa. That is a very, very important point. It's very, very interesting. So in other words, what that tells us is that South Africa got to learn from what was happening in Namibia. Now remember, this is happening in 1990 in Namibia, and the elections in South Africa are only going to take place in 1994. But negotiations are also going to start in 1990. So already you can see the parallels there, that South Africa got to learn from what was going on in Namibia. It was perhaps a dress rehearsal for what could possibly be achieved in South Africa, as well as being a sign that under Gorbachev, foreign adventures by the Soviets would be stopped. Okay. Now, again, historians, you already know that the USSR was involved in Africa, aiding the liberation movements and all that. But then what happened in 1989 was that the Soviet Union collapsed. So what happened was that when Gorbachev took over, he introduced reforms, and obviously that paved way for negotiations in South Africa, because the National Party government could no longer use communism as an excuse not to negotiate with the liberation movement. And that a negotiated settlement should be sought in Namibia, South Africa, and elsewhere by political rather than violent means. Okay, I'm going to underline rather than violent means because you already know that in the 1990s, leading up to democracy in 1994, there was a lot of violence. But what this was teaching, what was happening in Namibia, it taught the people in South Africa, the National Party, the ANC, and other people who were involved in negotiations, that it was possible to achieve change through peaceful means, political rather than violent means, that there was no need to carry on fighting each other. They had to go and negotiate. So that was the first factor that we looked at. Remember, when we started with the source, we said there were two main factors that we were going to look at. So that was the first one. Now let's look at the second one. So if we read on from this source, let me close the pen. See, okay. The second factor was the steady unraveling or the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now remember, I've already told you about this, that the collapse of the Soviet Union was very important in South Africa's road to democracy, because what it meant was that the National Party government could no longer use communism as an excuse, because communism was no longer a threat, as the USSR had collapsed. So I'm going to quickly underline that so that you know exactly what to look for. So it's the collapse of the Soviet Union and the rollback of its domination over much of Eastern Europe. So rollback of its domination over much of Eastern Europe. That means the Soviet Union no longer had control over Eastern Europe. So in other words, it had lost its power, which was symbolized by the destruction of the Berlin Wall on the 9th of November 1989. So again, I'm going to underline the destruction of the Berlin Wall. The date, well, you don't need to memorize the date, it's already there. But the destruction of the Berlin Wall was very important because the Berlin Wall was the only physical symbol of the Cold War. So the fact that the Berlin Wall was no longer there, it meant that communism was not there anymore. It also meant
Mindset, so.
Okay, goodbye. Thank you very much.
He's a bit nervous, guys. It's so cute. I just want to hug him. But enough of that. Goodbye, Shucks. And are you guys ready for some history? Because Looney's going to leave us, Shucks is going to leave us, and all you're going to be left with is me and Mumsy. So let's get rolling, Mumsy.
Okay, thank you, Megan, and congratulations to Shucks. I'd like one of those as well, but unfortunately, I can't get one. Okay, as I said before, today we'll be focusing on paper 2. I'm going to be using this year's exam from February and March 2013. So the themes will exactly be the same as in this question paper that we'll be working with, but obviously the questions will not be the same. So the reason for this show is to give you the skills, to show you how you unpack the sources, how you analyze the sources, and how you interpret the questions. So, I've already told you that we're going to work through various questions from the February-March 2013 paper 2 to prepare you for tomorrow's exam. And then what we're going to do is I've selected some questions where I think learners, most learners, need the skills. So we're not going to go over the entire exam. If you really want to see the exam, it is available on the Department of Education website. So you can go there and have a look at it. The marking guidelines are there as well. But the reason I'm here, as I said before, is to just help you with the skills. So the first thing we're going to do is to look at the source. We're going to be looking at South Africa and how it was impacted by the collapse of the Soviet Union. Okay, yes, I'm trying to get the source.
The board fights with Mumsy now. She's like,
it does this all the time.
There we go.
Okay,
there. Somewhere. There we go.
Okay, now if you look at the description of the source, it says, this source outlines the factors that forced the National Party government to the negotiating table with the African National Congress. Okay, I'm going to underline the factors that forced the National Party government. I'm circling that because that is our focus. This is about the factors that forced the National Party government to the negotiating table. So we're focusing on the negotiations. Now, as I am unpacking this source, I'd like you to do the same thing when you get into the exam. So even before you read the source, the caption tells you what the source is about, so that when you go and read it, you already know what the source is about. So you will find those things. You will be looking for those factors that helped or forced the National Party government to negotiate with the African National Congress. So let's read the source together. 2 factors were helpful. So already the source is telling you that there were 2 factors. So please don't try and look for 3 or 5 or more, because this source tells you that there were 2 factors that were helpful to de Klerk in pushing for inclusive negotiations. First, okay, so that is number 1, because later on we'll be looking at the questions. And then when you are answering the questions, you will obviously have to go back to the source and look at all these things we've underlined or highlighted or numbered and so on. So the first one was South Africa had succeeded in extricating or removing itself from the Namibian embarrassing situation. I'm not going to read the difficult words because the explanations are there for you to understand. So really don't stress about the difficult words. With considerable assistance from the United Nations. So that is the first point, that South Africa had removed itself from Namibia. Okay, let's read on. The protracted negotiating process culminated in general elections in 1989 and independence in March 1990. So as you can see, they're still talking about Namibia. That is what happened in Namibia. Now, because of South Africa removing herself from Namibia, what happened was that there were negotiations, and then they had the general elections in 1989, and then they